Welcome back to our Fox News virtual town hall, America Together, returning to work. Here tonight, live from the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., we are joined now by President Donald Trump. Good to see you, sir.
Well, thank you both very much. We never had a more beautiful set than this, did we?
That's right.
Amazing.
Thanks for doing this.
Thank
This
you.
is a little different than our last town hall in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
That's true.
We'll
That
be
was the
taking
beauty.
questions from around the country.
Good.
And a lot of great questions. I want to start with this, though, Mr. President. There is a real split in the country. There are folks out there becoming increasingly angry about the closures. There are many Americans also who are angry about the reopenings. They're fearful. As many of these states are on the rise in their numbers, there's 66,000 deaths, more than that now.
Yeah.
As president, what do you say to the people who are scared to go back to work on one side? And what do you say to the people who are really angry about these lingering closures?
Well, I think you can satisfy both. If you're scared, you're going to stay back a little bit and you're going to watch it. And I think anyone over 60, because we have a pretty good roadmap right now. Anybody over 60, you could say 65, but let's make it 60. We have to protect those people and we have to watch it, and maybe they stay back longer. But no, I think you can really have it both ways. I think a lot of people want to go back. They just want to go back. You see it every day. You see demonstrations all over the country, and those are meaningful demonstrations. Oh, it's big stuff. But you also have some people that are very scared. Probably everybody's scared when you get right down to it. It's a terrible thing that happened to our country. It came from China. It should have been stopped. It could have been stopped on the spot. They chose not to do it, or something happened. Either there was incompetence or they didn't do it for some reason. And we're going to have to find out what that reason was. But people are absolutely scared. But there are other people that are scared about being locked in a room and losing their job and not having any income. And, you know, for the first time, these are workers. These are people that want to get back and work and make a living. And they're afraid their job's not going to be there. And at a certain point, if you keep it going too long, that's going to happen. So I understand that very well.
On that note, let's hear from our first video questioner. This is Shayna Cruz from Coleman, Alabama.
Mr. President, my name is Shayna Cruz, and I'm a single mother from Alabama. I lived paycheck to paycheck before the virus, but then I lost my job in March. I haven't received a stimulus payment or anything from unemployment. I'm behind on every bill, about to be evicted from my home, and I've had to rely on donations in order to feed my children. I feel frustrated and I feel scared not knowing where to turn or what to do. What advice do you have for me and others in my situation? Is there more help coming?
Number one, there's more help coming. We have really no choice because incredible people like this are, you know, it's not your fault. I mean, just remember that it's not your fault. And there is more help coming. There has to be. And we want to get it to a point when we open, we're not going to lose businesses. And therefore, more importantly, frankly, we're not going to lose the jobs that run the businesses. So a case like that is an exact, you know, it's really, that's the reason why we have to do more. And we're going to do more. And everybody wants to do more. It's actually on that aspect of it, it's very bipartisan. So the answer is yes, we're going to do more, and you're going to have your job. You're going to get another job, or you're going to get a better job. You get a job where you make more money, frankly, and I think that's going to happen. I think we're going to have an incredible following year. We're going to go into a transition in the third quarter, and we're going to see things happening that look good. I really believe that. I have a good feel for this stuff. I've done it for a long time. We built the greatest economy in the world. The greatest economy, frankly, Bret, and you can correct me if you'd like, but you can't because it's fact. The greatest economy that the world has ever seen. And then one day they said, sir, we're going to have to close it. I said, what are you talking about closing it? Nobody ever heard that. We're going to have to close it. And we did the right thing. I think we saved millions of lives, but now we have to get it back open. And we have to get it back open safely, but as quickly as possible.
You know, let me ask you about that, because you've talked about that moment quite a bit with just this roaring economy and advisors saying to you, we've got to shut it down at this point. So when you look back on that moment and you see some other examples, Japan, for example, did not do as broad a shutdown. They've only lost about 500 people out of 130 million.
You're right, but now they're doing a massive shutdown because they've been hit very hard. And so you're right about it.
Yeah, that's my question. Do you ever look back at that moment in the Oval Office and say, maybe we went too far?
No, we did the right thing. I do look back on it because my attitude was, we're not going to shut it down. Look, we're going to lose anywhere from 75, 80 to 100,000 people. That's a horrible thing. We shouldn't lose one person over this. This should have been stopped in China. It should have been stopped. But if we didn't do it, the minimum we would have lost is 1.2 million, 1.4 million, 1.5 million. That's the minimum. We would have lost probably higher than, it's possible, higher than 2.2. You know the way you have to look at that? I've never seen death like this. I've never personally experienced anything like it. And they talk about the flu and all of that. Well, I've known people that had the flu all my life. I was lucky. I never had the flu. Then I came here, they want to give a flu shot. And I said, I don't want a flu shot, but they have to give it. But you know what? I've known people that had the flu all of my life. Nobody ever died. I never had a friend, he had the flu and he died. I've lost 3 friends, one a very good friend, a very successful man, New York guy, employed a lot of people. They were all crying over his death. Stanley Shearer. He went to the hospital, he calls me up because I tested positive. I said, well, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to the hospital. I'll call you tomorrow. He didn't call. I called the hospital. He's in a coma. No, I know a lot of people that had the flu. They were never in a coma. This is a very advanced, this is a very horrible thing we're fighting. But with all of that said, we've learned a lot about it. It affects older people. It affects, if you have any problem, heart, diabetes, even a little weak heart, a little diabetes, this thing is vicious, and it can take you out, and it can take you out very strongly. But children do very well. Young children do better than, teens.
So you think you've learned from this, how you've dealt with it now?
Yeah.
If it comes up in the fall, you'll do something different?
Yeah, we'll put out the embers. We'll put out whatever it may be. We may have to put out a fire. I tell you one thing. We did the right thing, and I really believe we could have saved 1.5 million lives. And by the way, just to know what that means, we've seen death like Elmhurst Hospital in Queens, right where I grew up, right near where I grew up. Know the building very well, know the hospital. They had body bags lined up in hallways. They had body bags sitting out on sidewalks. We've never seen that in this country. You saw the mass grave. It's called Hart's Island. They built a mass grave. I've never seen anything like that. When you look at that, and that's with, let's say it's 100,000 or 90 or 95. Now multiply it out. Don't go 2.2 or 2.5 million. Say it's half of that. So take the numbers that we looked at that nobody in this country has ever witnessed, and now multiply it times 15 or 20. So instead of having 10 or 12 body bags laying in a hallway, you'd have 15 times more than that?
That's the scary part for business owners who are getting ready to open up. Our next question comes from here in D.C., and it's a topic we received a lot of questions about, and that is testing and what people have to do. Take a listen.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Sarah Poland. I'm the owner of Supergirl, based in Washington, D.C., and I'd like to know what kind of federal protocols are going to be in place regarding testing to ensure that my potential customers and staff feel safe when people are leaving their homes. For example, if someone comes from another state that doesn't have the same testing standards as another, and they both come to my establishment, how are we all going to feel safe?
Thank you very much. Look, it depends on where you're coming from. New York is a very much different place than Montana or many other states, really, where it's not, really too bad. It's always bad. They lose anybody, it's bad. And every state has lost significant numbers of people. I mean, whether you're talking about 20 people or 25 people, that's a significant number of people. But it depends on where you come from. Certain states are going to have to take a little more time in getting open, and they're doing that. Some states, I think, frankly, aren't going fast enough. I mean, you have some states that, Virginia, they want to close down till the middle of June, and a lot of things that they're doing. I really believe you can go to parks, you can go to beaches, you keep it, you keep the spread, you stay away a certain amount. And I really think the public has been incredible with that's one of the reasons we're successful. That's one of the, if you call losing 80 or 90,000 people successful, but it's one of the reasons that we're not at that high end of the plane as opposed to the low end of the plane.
That number has changed, Mr. President. You said 50,
it's going up.
60,
No, it's going up.
70,
I used to say 65,000, and now I'm saying 80 or 90, and it goes up, and it goes up rapidly. But it's still going to be, no matter how you look at it, at the very lower end of the plane if we did the shutdown.
You said that the governors would be kind of responsible for the testing, and we just talked to Governor Hogan. He says there is federal assistance coming to get specific parts.
Well, not only coming, we've given him a lot of assistance, which is good.
So your son-in-law advisor, Jared Kushner, declared that it's a great success story, the federal response.
It is.
And that when you look at the other side, that you're on the other side medically. Do you think that as deaths are going up and cases are going up, that we really are on the other side medically, and that this is a great success story from the federal government?
Well, well, it's too soon to say that really, I guess, because, you know, we're still in the middle of something, but certainly we would have lost a lot more people, Bret, if we would have done, as an example, you call it herd, if we would have done herd. In other words, everything's wonderful, let's just keep going along.
Herd immunity.
We would have lost 2.5 million people, I think, or 1.5 million or 2 million people. No, I think we've done, I think the American people have done a good job. This is a tragic situation. Everybody knows somebody that's been affected. That's a very rare thing, but everybody knows. Some states have done a better job than others. I mean, that's the way it is. But in some states, you can do a lot less than in other states. In New York, I think you're going to have to go around with masks for a while. You're going to have to do separation. You're distancing. You're going to have to do that for a while. But some states are doing so well, and others are. I have to tell you, I got to know the governors, and with a few exceptions, to be honest, because they're just political machines, and anything you say, it's always going to be like, what's good politically? Because we shouldn't be in that position. I will say that they really have done, a lot of them, a great job, and we've worked with them. There were no ventilators. We're the king of ventilators. You look at the testing. We tested now 6.5 million people. The next highest is, I think it's 2.5 million people, either Germany or South Korea. And South Korea thinks we've done an incredible job. They're saying the job, he's a friend of mine, President Moon. He said the job you've done on testing and the job we've done on ventilators, we have it's one of the greatest buildups we've ever had in this country since certainly the Second World War.
Speaking of that, you know, Gretchen Whitmer, the governor in Michigan, she's saying this morning on TV, we don't have the reagents we need, we don't have the swabs we need. She's still saying that she can't get the testing that she wants.
Look, we had a phone call 5 days ago with the governors. I was on the call with Vice President Mike Pence, who's done a great job. He's the head of the committee, the task force. Every governor there, we asked it, what do you need? Not one governor needed anything. Now all of a sudden you see her on the Sunday, I watched it. Well, we should get this or we should get that. She ought to get back to running her state properly, because she should have brought it up on a phone call. I was on that call for an hour and a half. The call, I stayed right till the end. And at the end I said, does anybody need anything? We had one governor, Inslee, who's always wanting something. And frankly, he didn't do a very good job on nursing homes, as far as I'm concerned, state of Washington. And he said, we need swabs. I said, why don't you get them yourself? But if you can't, we'll get them. And I could say the same thing about her. But here's the thing. Why didn't they bring this up? I had a Bret, you know about the call. It was every week or 2 weeks we'll have a call. All 50 governors, I believe, were on that call. The last statement, okay, who needs something? None of them. Many of them spoke. Nobody needed, other than Washington wanted swabs, which are easy to get, very easy to get.
So let me ask you, the man who you're about to hear from was told he had a 20% chance to live. He had COVID-19. He was in really bad shape, young. I think he's about 39 years old, actually, 39 years old. But he did recover. And here's Danny Lemos from Grand Island, Nebraska.
Okay.
President Trump, this is Danny again here at Grand Island, Nebraska. With the FDA approving remdesivir as a drug of choice to help fight this, which is the drug I was on, what are we going to do and put in place to make sure that there's enough of this drug available for everybody?
So we're doing that. It's a great question because it's a very hard drug to make, and it takes a period of time, and is made by Gilead. And I know that Danny gave that drug a lot of credit for saving his life. I think that's correct, Danny. But Danny, I believe, gave a lot of credit to that drug for saving his life. We are pushing it really hard. We're also pushing something else, the vaccines. We are very confident that we're going to have a vaccine at the end of the year. By the end of the year, have a vaccine.
By the end of this year?
We think we're going to have a vaccine by the end of this year. And we're pushing very hard. You know, we're building supply lines now. We don't even have the final vaccine. Johnson & Johnson, if you look at Johnson & Johnson is doing it. We have many companies are, I think, close, because I meet with the heads of them, and I find it a very interesting subject because it's so important. But I think we'll have a vaccine by the end of the year. We're also pushing it. Look, we're doing things at the FDA that's never happened before. We're getting approval so fast. Like, as an example, with Gilead on the new remdesivir, that's going to be, that's a game changer because it's a 31% step. It's a step. It's a 31% step, and then they'll be at 50%. Like AIDS, what's happened with AIDS? We had AIDS was a scourge all over the world. It was, you were dead. It was a death certificate. And then all of a sudden they came up with some, and now we will be AIDS-free within 8 years. We started 10 years. Should have started in the previous administration. They did nothing.
So, Mr. President,
it started at my administration.
You think
10 years.
The FDA has approved this remdesivir. And
yes.
He's asking, how do you get it? Are you going to use the Defense Production Act to get it?
Well, he got it. I'll tell you, Danny got it, fortunately, and Danny gave it credit for saving his life. We are putting the full power and might behind this drug. With that being said, it's a very hard drug. There are others that are much easier to make. It takes a little period of time to make it. The company is a great company, done incredible work over the years. They are pushing absolutely as fast. You know, this isn't something like, let's build machines, or this is a very delicate balance, but we're pushing very, very hard on remdesivir.
So our next question is from a teacher in Chesterfield, Virginia.
Okay.
Hi, President Trump. My name is Kristen Murray. I'm an algebra teacher in Virginia. We appreciate you and support you in all you're doing. I would like to see what your ideas are for getting us teachers back into our classrooms. We don't want to be virtual teaching. We want to be in the classrooms with our students. So what's your ideas for getting us back in our classrooms and getting the doors open?
Well,
Before you answer that, Mr.
Yes,
President, just
please.
1 second. A lot of questions tonight, not only from teachers, but also the other side, from students talking about COVID-19. Real quick, put them together here. Rebecca Johnson.
Hi, I'm Rebecca, and I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm going to be a freshman in high school next year, and I worry that coronavirus is going to come back. How will I feel safe going back to school if a second wave hits?
So when you go back, and you have one problem that is a bigger problem, and that's teachers over 60 or 65 years old, the teachers. Because I think that Kristen and Rebecca are going to be in great shape, and they may wear masks for a while, and they may be separated further than what they're used to, and I think they're going to be in great shape. But we have to get our schools back. This virtual teaching is wonderful, and, you know, frankly, it's taken a very positive step. I mean, I could say I've had now essentially board meetings and meetings with governors and other people with, you know, using, they call it tele, right? Tele. And it's not bad, but there's nothing like having a meeting. I still think you're never going to replace that. No, they're going to go back. We have to have our students go back to school. My biggest thing, because I really feel the students are in great shape, they're going to be all of the things we have to do, all of the things. But I do worry about teachers at a certain age. Rebecca's young, and she's going to be fine. The students are going to be fine. But I really think that, you know, if you take a look, Kristen is going to be fine. But if you have a teacher that's 65 or 70 years old and has diabetes, that one, I think they're going to have to sit it out for a little while.
But, Mr. President,
unless we come up with the vaccine sooner.
Are you going to urge the nation's universities and schools to go back in September? I
am. I want them to go back. We have to get our country back, yeah. I don't want to do this forever. I watched a very good governor, former governor of Indiana, he preceded Mike Pence, good governor, and he's the head of Purdue. It's a great school. And I saw him the other day. He wants to go back. He's going back. Purdue, big school, fantastic. They're going back. We have to go back. We have to go back. And whatever it is, I would say, with the exception of teachers at a certain age, maybe they should wait till this thing passes. It will pass. You know, it's going to pass. And a lot of people say, we have to get the vaccine. Well, certainly we do. And we have to get therapeutics. I'd rather have right now therapeutics that make people better. That's where remdesivir is really good.
You did talk a lot about hydroxychloroquine.
I do, and I still do.
And there were some studies that came out that questioned the cardiac tie, but you stopped talking about it.
One study, but there were studies that came out that say it's very good, too. And I'll tell you what, I've had 3 calls in the last 4 days, of people that took it, and they're giving it credit for saving their lives. And other other countries are using it. They're bragging about it. You look at their numbers. Here's what we've been reduced to in this country. the Democrats, the radical left, whatever you want, would rather see people, I'm going to be very nice, I'm not going to say die, I'm going to say would rather see people not get well because they think I'm going to get credit if, you know, hydroxychloroquine works. And I don't care about it. I have nothing to do with it, by the way. Everyone said I own the company. I have nothing to do with hydroxychloroquine, other than if it worked, it would be great. It would be so good for our nation because it would save people. But, you know, we've had some very good, you look at, there are certain countries that swear by it. They have a much lower number. You know the countries I'm talking about.
But you're putting your real chips on the vaccine being fast.
Oh, I think we're going to have a vaccine by the end of the year. Now, the doctors would say, well, you shouldn't say that. I'll say what I think. I've met with the heads of the big companies. These are great companies. Yeah, I think we're going to have a vaccine much sooner rather than later. I think it will be. I think that will be done. I would rather have, frankly, therapeutic, meaning something to make people better, if not a cure, at least a therapeutic. And, you know, that, look, we started the other day with Gilead. I really think so. But we're going to have other things. And it could be that hydroxy is going to be, we don't lose anything with hydroxy. It's been out there, Bret. It's been out there for so many years. Then they start doing the false reports. It's been used for numerous things for many years. People aren't dying from it. But
obviously,
they would rather,
doctors are involved there. And
they don't want to see a good result. And that's very sad.
Let me ask, there are some questions that deal with looking back. Leslie is one of them. Leslie Caulfield from New Jersey has our next question for the piece.
President Trump, it's been widely reported that the threat of the coronavirus was included in your daily intelligence briefings for weeks prior to the first confirmed case in the U.S. Can you please explain to us why you did not act sooner to prepare this country for this pandemic?
Okay, I love the question, actually, because what I did is way early, I closed our country to China. Nancy Pelosi was a month later saying it's going to pass. Everybody, even Tony Fauci was saying it's going to pass, not going to be a big deal. Schumer was talking about all sorts of things. This is long after I closed the country. They called me a racist. They said xenophobic. Biden said he was xenophobic. Biden has now written a letter of apology because I did the right thing. I saved hundreds of thousands of lives. Okay. She's asking me the question about intelligence. I have the head of the intelligence agencies here today. And here's the exact thing. And we have it. It's going to be released tomorrow or the next day. But I released it today. On January 23rd, I was told that there could be a virus coming in, but it was of no real import. In other words, it wasn't, oh, we got to do something, we got to do something. It was a brief conversation, and it was only on January 23rd. Shortly thereafter, I closed down the country to China. And we had 21 people in the room. I was the only one that wanted to close it down. Very good people in the room, very well-meaning. But take a look. On, I think it was February 26th, Nancy Pelosi is let's dance in the streets of Chinatown to show that it's not going to hurt us. In other words, I'm not blaming her for it, but nobody thought this was going to happen. But on January, it's such an important question to me because they think that months earlier we were told about this and we should have done something about it. China didn't even know for a period of time. It got out. China should have stopped it. But China, they didn't know, and they wouldn't let us in. We wanted to go into China. They didn't want us to go in because they didn't want to have us see it. Maybe they were worried about competence. Maybe they were worried about something else. But the question is good, and here's the final answer. The intelligence agencies told me on the 23rd, shortly thereafter, I closed down the country, but I didn't do it because of what they said, because they said it very matter-of-factly. It was not a big deal. And the intelligence agencies, which are now, because before they weren't, which are now very competently run with some great people and some great people coming, the intelligence agencies will tell you that tomorrow.
So when you did stop travel in from China, about 40,000 people came back to this country. They
were American citizens,
but you said they were tested? Who tested them and where?
They were tested, well, the different states. They were tested, they were quarantined when they were sick, and they came back. I spoke with Ron DeSantis 2 days ago. He called me. He said, you know, the 40,000 people that came back, the ones that went to Florida, he said, we put them through the grill. We had people quarantined. We had people tested. You could ask the governor, you know, there's one example, but other governors did the same thing if they were doing their job. But I had to let them come back. I actually said maybe we could keep them there for a while. These are American citizens. I had to let them come back, Martha. So you had 40,000 people. Now, when the Democrat said it, he said he closed the border, but he let 40,000. They don't say they were American citizens. I did the right thing. But when they came back, they were tested. Some were tested probably not as good as they could have been. I can tell you, Florida tested the people very, very well. And look how low the numbers are in Florida. They've done a great job.
President, carved on the wall behind me is Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural address. And a quote, "With malice toward none, with charity for all, let us bind up the nation's wounds." Words, meant to heal a nation devastated by civil war. We obviously live in a divided time as well. You know that well. Your choice even of this hallowed place for this virtual town hall is creating controversy, criticism. What do you say to people who say this is not the right venue for this?
I didn't know that it was creating criticism, and I did say this would be nice, but I thought it was your choice, not ours. And I had not heard. What can you criticize? I don't think it's ever been done, what we're doing tonight here. And I think it's great for the American people to see this is a great work of art. Aside from the fact that that was a great man, this is a great work of art. It's one of the greatest sculptures, one of the greatest statues, to me, anywhere in the world. And you can go to Italy, you can go anywhere. That's, to me, one of the greats. And I didn't know there was controversy. Why is there controversy?
Some from Capitol Hill sent a letter that it's not the right place, not the right site. But as far as bringing America together, do you think you're doing that?
I think we're winning very big, and then we had a horrible thing happen. We're winning bigger than we've ever won before, Bret. And I think that winning ultimately is going to bring this country together. I'm shocked that during a crisis it would be so partisan. When you see all these committees, 7 or 8 committees, we haven't even started, and they have all these committees looking for trouble, just looking for trouble. Every enemy I have is put on a Democrat committee. And I was surprised. They did the impeachment hoax. It was a total hoax over a phone call that was a perfect call. And we had tremendous, when you look at the House, I think it was 196 to nothing, the Republicans. There was great unity. In the Senate, the same thing. With all of that unity we have, in one sense, we have great unity. In another sense, I think they're going to come along. I mean, I certainly hope so. But the main thing I have to do is bring our country back, and I want to get it back to where it was, or maybe beyond where it was. We have tremendous stimulus, all the money we've been talking about so far tonight. I think next year is going to be a phenomenal economic year. We can never forget all the people that have died, the souls that have been lost in this horrible thing that shouldn't have happened. Just shouldn't have happened. It was such a horrible thing. And there's a lot going on about finding out the answer to that, because this is something that should never have happened. It's tragic.
We want to talk to you a little bit more about China in just a moment. But you mentioned winning, and there's a race to win on the vaccine between countries in the world. So pushing this vaccine development in order to get it to go faster leads to human trials, people volunteering to basically be injected with COVID-19.
Right.
Are you concerned about the ethics or the risk of that in that push?
No, because they're volunteers. They know what they're getting into. They're, in many cases, very good people. They want to help the process. Look, a vaccine has never gone like it's gone now. We're so far ahead of any vaccine ever in history. These things would take 2, 4, 5, 6 years, 10 years. I think we're going to have a vaccine. I'm telling you, by the end of the year, I think we're going to have a vaccine.
You think another country could beat us?
I'm going to really say something that is not like me, and it's not like the two of you. I know you, and it's not like you. I don't care. I just want to get a vaccine that works. I really don't care. If it's another country, I'll take my hat off to them. We have to come up with a vaccine. We're working with other countries. We're working with Australia. We're working with UK. I spoke with, the other day, your Prime Minister of UK, right? He's Boris. He's a victim of what happened. He thought it was over. He thought it was over. It was vicious. And he made it. He's a great guy, and he made it. But he had firsthand experience, the ultimate firsthand experience.
Mr. President, our next questioner is Dina Rubio. She's the co-manager of a restaurant down in West Palm Beach, Florida. You know well. Here's her question.
We're facing the shortage of supplies due to the closure of chicken, pork, and beef plants. Prices are going up, and the restaurant industry is finding even more obstacles to stay afloat. My question is, how could we manage to keep working with very slim profit margins to begin with and absorb the shortage price increase at this point? And even when we do open our dining rooms, we will be having limited seating available.
Right. So the restaurant business is a tough business to start off with, not an easy business. We're doing a number of things. Number one, the supply chain is going to be in great shape. I did the Defense Production Act. We did things. The problem with the supply chain is you have people that have gotten sick with the COVID-19. You've had the people and they've gotten sick. They're getting better, and they're all getting better, and you can't make them work. I don't want them to work, frankly, if they're not feeling great. But we did something the other day, which you read about, which was a great shock to the system in a positive way. We have tremendous supply. We have tremendous demand. We have to get it from supply to the people, to the restaurants. And we're doing that really very well. 2 days ago, I signed this. It's coming along really good. Now, the bigger problem is what's going to happen with the restaurant. So we're not going to have any chain problem. The bigger problem is what are you going to do with a restaurant, which was, a nice little business, but all of a sudden they have half the number of seats if they go. Eventually, we're going to have all those seats back. You're going to have all those seats. I want to sit next to people. I don't want to have all this spread out, like even the way we're doing. We're doing this interview tonight. Look how far away you are. Look how far away you are. Normally we'd be sitting together and would have a nice interview. Of course, in this particular location, this isn't so bad. But no, we have to get our life back. We have to get our country back. We have to get the world back. We want to have, if we have a stadium in Alabama that holds 110,000 people against LSU, I went there. We want to have 110,000. We don't want to have 25,000 people or 40,000 people, and that'll happen. Maybe it's going to be a vaccine, or maybe it's going to be that this virus will pass. It will go. Will it come back? It might. It could. Some people say yes, but it will pass.
I want to go back to the meat processing plants because there's some controversy surrounding that. Danny Lemos, who you saw before, who had the remdesivir, who said it helped him survive. His father worked in one of those in Nebraska in the meat plants. And some people there say that they have plastic between them, but they're too close together. A lot of immigrants working there who are concerned, but they can't turn down a paycheck to go back there. So the Smithfield plant in Crete wanted to shut down for 2 weeks. And then the executive order changed that. So there's some pushback on that decision by you. What do you say to those people?
Well, the companies really wanted it. The employees have to want to work. Now, if they don't want to work, that's one thing, but they are working and they need the money, and the companies are they're great companies. These are the biggest companies in the world in terms of delivery and in terms of all of the things they do to get it from literally the ranch or the farm into the hands of the consuming public. But I think it's all working out. The numbers are heading in the right direction. The numbers, look, the biggest thing we can do to solve every problem is get rid of the plague. I call it the plague. If we get rid of the plague, all these problems go away very quickly.
But some of those meat processing areas are hot spots right now.
They're hot spots, and they're moving them, and they did put up plastic, but now they're going to move them, in some cases, further away. And certain plants don't have any problem at all. You have plants with no problem at all. Then you have some where it was a hot spot. Those people are tending to get better very quickly. I think, Danny's an example. I hope his father's going to be okay, too. But it's all working out. It's all working out. It's horrible that we have to go through it, but it's all working out.
Our next question is from Carol McNeil, a retired teacher in Bluffton, South Carolina.
A family member who lives in a very exclusive and expensive assisted living center in the Boston area was recently diagnosed with coronavirus. What will be done both in the short term and in the long term to protect the vulnerable in nursing homes, senior housing, and assisted living centers?
So the nursing home problem, that's your ground zero. It really is ground zero. We first heard about it, I did, in Washington, when so many people were, in the state of Washington, where so many people died in a single nursing home. And you realized immediately there's a vulnerability there. What we're doing is legislation immediately as to how many people can be in. Some people made some terrible mistakes. They were putting other people into empty areas in nursing homes that were sick. And that affected the people in the nursing homes. Because the one thing about this disease that everybody's learned very easily and very quickly is the way it's so contagious. It is the most contagious thing people have seen. So in 1917, we had a horrible, in that case, it was a flu, right? You remember the Spanish flu. So much has been written about it. Now, of course, it's the hottest. Everybody that writes a book about the Spanish flu, 1917, it killed between 100 and, I guess, 50 to 100 million people. It probably ended the First World War because the soldiers were all getting sick. It was the worst the world has ever seen that we know of. We have something that's different. It's not as powerful, but it's far more contagious.
But with regard to the nursing homes, one of the questions that came to my mind when I watched the Comfort leaving Manhattan and the Javits Center, why were these people next to each other like this in nursing homes when we had all this excess capacity and beds? Why weren't they sent there?
So on that one, you have to ask the governor, and in the case, the governors, because all I can do is provide the space. They're running their state, as you understand, and that's the way it should be. They run their state through mayors and through this and that, bring it down local or bring it down to a point. But we provided 2,900 beds in the convention center. On top of that, we brought in the Comfort. They did a phenomenal job. And the Comfort wasn't meant for the COVID-19. The Comfort was meant for people that had car accidents and everything else. So we found out there were no accidents because nobody was driving. We had very few accidents. But it wasn't meant for that. What we did is we converted it to that, but still they didn't use it much. And I think the numbers now are getting better. We just moved the Comfort. We're going to move it someplace else, probably perhaps for some other kind of problem. But we had the Comfort there, and we built in the Javits Center, we built over 2,000 beds. And by the way, built in like 5 days by the Army Corps of Engineers. The Army Corps of Engineers have done one of the greatest jobs anyone's ever seen, including the fact that we happen to be building a wall on the southern border that's now up to 172 miles.
Quickly, how concerned are you about hospitals that are not dealing with COVID-19 or primarily not, and they're letting people go or closing?
We have to get elective surgery, it's called, and we have to let them come back. It's okay with us. Again, that's up to the governors. You have some hospitals where they have almost no COVID, and they have the hospital, essentially, you can't go and do elective surgery, meaning a surgery, well, in some cases it's cancer where they're waiting long, and that's not a good thing to be waiting long. So it's such a, they have to get back. They have to let these hospitals, because the hospitals are legitimately, you think they're making a lot of money, they're losing a fortune. They have to let those hospitals reopen and get back to elective surgery. And there are many hospitals right now that could be doing that. That's up to the governors. That's not up to me.